Hello. I've now read Eleanor Catton's new novel, Birnham Wood, and I have some thoughts and feelings and opinions about it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. It's a really interesting one, and there's lots to say about it, so I'm going to get into it. I'm going to avoid spoilers as much as possible because I know a lot of people haven't read this novel yet. A lot of people are really anticipating it, so I'll be careful because there are lots of surprising and exciting things that happen in this book. I don't want to give any of it away, but I do want to give a sense of the book overall as a whole. Now, first off, Eleanor Catton's novel, The Luminaries. Am I the only one that completely loved that book? I know I'm not, because it was a big bestseller. It won the Booker Prize. A huge amount of people read it and loved it, and I did too. And I have to say, it has a really special place in my heart because when I read it almost 10 years ago, I was so swept away by it and its brilliance and wanted to talk about it with other people. Nobody else I knew around me in physical real life had actually read it yet, so I really wanted to discuss it. So I went online, started discussing it, and decided I wanted to start a book blog that I would post about this book because I wanted to put down all of my thoughts and feelings about it, and so I did. And so Eleanor Catton's The Luminaries partly inspired me to start making a book blog 10 years ago, and that was my first time really participating in a lot of bookish discussion online, which has continued. After that, I went on to make this YouTube channel, so it's really partly why I'm here today, and I still actively maintain that book blog and update it quite a lot with what I'm currently reading and have just read. And I've found so many opportunities, made so many great connections online, and had so much great bookish discussion because of that. And so, sorry, that's a slightly sentimental note, but just to say the impact of that the Luminaries had on me was really big, and it really changed my life and how I talk about books. So it was a really important book in my literary journey, in my reading journey throughout my life. So yes, of course, I'm hugely anticipating her new novel, which has taken almost 10 years to come out for this third novel of Eleanor Catton's to be published. And so yeah, I was hugely anticipating it as well. So to start off with, Birnham Wood, as you probably know, is taken from Shakespeare. It's a line from Macbeth when the weird sisters are making a prophecy. Should I do the line? Yeah, you want me to do the line, don't you?
Macbeth shall never vanquished be until great Birnam Wood to high Dunsinane Hill shall come against him.
Thank you. I'm expecting a call from the Globe any day now to make my Shakespearean debut. Ben at Doom Antidote, I'm coming for your job. So anyway, yes, it's taken from the Shakespeare, but you definitely don't need to understand the context or the play of Macbeth at all to get more out of this book, because it is not set during that time. It only sort of loosely plays upon the themes in Macbeth and really only comes into play, I thought, prominently towards the end of the novel. But of course, yes, you could read a lot more into this book in how it relates to that Shakespearean play. At the center of the novel is a contemporary New Zealand gardening guerrilla group or farming collective that utilize unused land around the country in which they cultivate crops to distribute to those in need. So this is both a humanitarian and environmental act on the part of the members of this group, and they often use methods that aren't strictly legal. So when the group's founder, Mira, researches a large tract of land that's bordering a national forest and which has been seemingly abandoned following a natural disaster, she sees an opportunity for a large-scale planting project. However, an American billionaire and pioneer in drone technology named Robert Lemoni is under negotiations with the landowners to purchase this tract of land, purportedly to build himself a doomsday bunker. So when Lemoni proposes to the collective that he can charitably fund their activities, some members of the group feel that they are making a deal with the devil. What follows is an ecological thriller, an in-depth character study, and a social commentary on modern politics and technology. Now, my sense is, and I could be wrong about this, but I think that many readers will struggle to get into this book. I certainly did at first, because the author front-loads the story with a lot of character detail. Long sections describe the primary characters' mentalities, ideologies, backgrounds, and conflicts. This means that most of the initial scenes in this novel occur internally as a psychodrama concerning the central members of Birnham Wood, Mira and Shelley, but also renegade journalist Tony, the scheming Lemoni, and the newly anointed Lord and Lady Darvish, who actually own the property. Reading such rich portraits of these individuals and their relationships to each other is interesting, but it means that there's not really a lot of action in the story until much later sections of the novel. It's kind of like sitting in a car for a long time that's revving and revving until finally it leaps forth at great speed. But when it does get going, the story is absolutely gripping, and I was totally gripped in the final 150 pages of this novel. The trouble is that there are 275 pages before that point. I think some readers' patience will have worn thin by then. Again, that is not to say that these earlier sections aren't interesting, but the story is more slow-moving. However, I found the thrilling ending of this novel and the larger meaning of the story to be extremely compelling. So I was glad that I went on this journey and read the entire book. I'm not sure why Catton chose to structure the novel in this way. I mean, typically the information that she relates in these long sections about the characters would be integrated into more dramatic action and in scenes where the characters actually interact with each other. Yet in this story, most of the characters' psychological makeup is related while they're scanning the internet or looking through their phones or surveying surveillance footage. Characters spend a lot of time justifying their points of view to themselves or projecting into the future how they want events to play out. When verbal exchanges occur, it's either in a group meeting or in a telephone call or at a dinner party, and when the characters are speaking, it's more like they're delivering monologues rather than listening to each other. This occurs in a Jane Austen style, which makes a lot of sense because recently Catton wrote a screenplay for a new film version of Emma. Also, I think Catton might be commenting on the way that our online lives are so internally focused. When we think we're communicating with people on the internet, we're more often likely just talking to ourselves, like I am to myself right now, and the people that are receptive to it are more likely to be a small group of like-minded individuals whose opinions are all in agreement. And going back to the Shakespearean thing, there was a really interesting interview in the Guardian last weekend with Eleanor Catton, in which she's talking about this and the influence of Macbeth on this novel, and she says that she created an intricate master plan in which Each of the main characters could be seen as Macbeth, with a corresponding Lady Macbeth, witches, and so on. It sounds trickier than it is as the narrative perspective shifts. Everybody could be the villain, which is an interesting point to make. And when going back and thinking about this book in retrospect, yeah, I do really enjoy thinking about that and the characters' relationships to each other. But I think all of these larger themes and issues that she's exploring in this way makes it more into a cerebral exercise, and it kind of sacrifices the theatrical impetus of large sections of the story. As a result, I felt more intellectually involved in this novel rather than emotionally invested. Nevertheless, it's an interesting modern-day tale that engages with a lot of political and environmental issues, and again, the ending of the novel is absolutely gripping. I do have to say that if Catton weren't an author I'd read before, I probably wouldn't have stuck with reading this novel. I mean, hundreds of pages to get through before you get to the real action of the story is a lot to ask. But I do think this novel possesses a subtle power, which means it's really worth sticking to the end. And again, I was really glad that I did. So I'll be really interested to know, are you keen to read this novel? Have you read it? If you have read it, what did you think about it? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I know probably a lot of people will disagree with me. There have been some really great reviews that have been coming out about this book, but I've also seen some reader responses that have been very mixed about it. So I'll be really keen to know, and I'll be really keen to discuss it with more people. But I'd also love to have a geek love fest about the Luminaries, because again, that novel is such a triumph. I want to go back to reading it someday, but I'll need time because it is such a big book, but is such, again, such a worthwhile enterprise. I'm investing into that because the story is so rich and powerful and majestic that I loved it so much. So yeah, really interesting author, a lot to say about her. Really brilliant in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think this novel slightly suffers with from some of the things that I've talked about. But I'd love to know what you think. I hope you're reading good things, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.